Welcome to our next session in our week of action powered by EIT Climate Kick. At EIT Climate Kick, we are focused on generating knowledge and innovation within a community of partners, all focused on climate, to move to a more climate-positive world all over the place. I'm Christian Daube. I'm leading the ClimAccelerator efforts at this organization, and I want to introduce you to this panelist conversation. This interview with Chris on what his journey is as an entrepreneur and what he's planning to do in the future. Before I introduce him, I think I want to really take you through what this will be about. I think you may ask your questions at any moment in the chat. We've got the YouTube moderators active. You may post any kind of idea or innovation or solution you're working on under our hashtag Destination 1.5. Our hashtag is Destination 1.5. And please feel free to share what you're working on every day as a climate entrepreneur and innovator and show it to us, show it to the world, especially today is focused on water. So I think that's the main focus. I think that's what we are all about. The Week of Action will have many, many sessions and we'll celebrate all these young climate innovators and entrepreneurs out there. So please welcome me and have Chris here with us, who is leading Triply and who has organized a good session with me today. Chris, are you here with us?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks as well. I mean, how are you doing today?
I am great. It's a nice sunny day here in Linz in Austria, and I'm very hyped for the session.
Very good, very good. May I ask you quickly, Chris, to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Triply as an organization?
Yeah, of course. I'll start with myself. My name is Chris Stelzmüller. I'm one of the two original founders of Triply. And I am actually from a technical background, but through my journey as an entrepreneur, I've also gained a lot of experience that doesn't only concern technical stuff, but also has a lot to do with leading teams, working together with people, and just building products in general. What Triply is about is basically making people and organizations better understand mobility and therefore being able to plan better mobility solutions. We, for instance, right now do have a product that allows companies to improve mobility solutions for their employees so that they don't always have to drive to work every day with the car and can also use more sustainable solutions for that.
Very good, very good. And Chris and the audience, I will ask you many questions around your startup and your organization, as well as the industry and sector of mobility you're in. So we'll get started with that part, and then later on, I will ask you a lot of questions about you as an entrepreneur and what your journey is as an entrepreneur, right? So maybe in the beginning, I mean, why did you choose to start Triply and why did you choose this industry or sector? Tell us a bit more.
That's a very long story, actually. But to boil it down, I am coming from a rural background. I grew up in rural Austria, and there, basically getting to school, to meet friends, to work, whatever, you more or less always need a car. I did have the good option of having a lot of friends in rural areas, so I could sometimes bike to them. But most of my colleagues and friends always started doing their driving licenses as soon as possible, getting cars with 16 or 17 so that they can drive around as soon as possible. And when we founded Triply initially, we wanted to solve that problem. We wanted to give rural areas a solution that isn't always doing the driving license as soon as possible, but to just give everybody living there better alternatives on how to get from A to B, basically.
And why did you choose to become different? I mean, what made you really start, and when did you start Triply?
We initially started Triply as a part of a school project where we just wanted to focus on the topic of rural mobility in general. But we quickly found out that it isn't enough, that you can't reach anything if you do just a project for a few months. And me and my co-founder Sebastian generally grew more and more interested in the topic and initially started looking for work options in the field. But when we discovered that most of the existing mobility companies are very interested in holding up a standard and not so much in improving the general situation of mobility, we just decided to found our own startup and make a change happen as soon as possible and as good as possible.
Okay. And how do you see the mobility industry in the future? What trends do you see?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I think that the trends, especially for cities, with different new kind of modes of mobility and also how you use them, especially when it comes to, for instance, the last mile trips that are now very often done with scooters, with shared bikes and so on. That's a big development that we saw in the cities in the last, 2 or 5 years. But what will be very interesting in the near future and also in the long run is how that boils down to the rural areas. If these or other innovative systems will also make it to the countryside, or if the countryside will stay at the same system and everybody will in 10 years still always use their own cars or their own motorized vehicles to get to work every day.
I think so as well. I mean, that's a trend you can see a lot in Europe. What do you think about all these electric cars popping up and all these sharing, let's say, ride-sharing alternatives out there?
Yeah. I think these are two very different things. I mean, in general, electric cars, in my opinion, do not solve the problem of just having a lot of cars on the road. Just because a car is electric doesn't mean that it takes up less space, that you stand less in traffic jams. That doesn't solve the problem. But I think what you talked about with the sharing initiatives and sharing questions, that is a big difference, because that could potentially mean that a lot of people switch from just using their own car with 1 or 2 persons in it, as is often the case when it comes to rural areas in Europe in general and also around the world. That of course that improves a lot. That is an ability to just use 4 or 5 people, to get 4 or 5 people to use the same car, and therefore basically not change anything of the underlying system, but just use it better, use infrastructure, use cars that already are existing, and just change the way that people interact with them and use them. And that's also, for instance, what we are advocating for on a basis of mobility to companies with one of our products, the mobility audit.
Okay. And coming back to Triply as well, what are you envisioning and where do you want to grow, basically, in which areas?
Yeah, so for us, the biggest next steps is to just scale out our product. We do already have a product that's tested for the first few companies, where we basically help companies understand and plan better mobility solutions for their employees. But what's important for us right now is that we do not only test this product on the first 10 companies and do a lot of manual work, but what we want to reach is to make this as easy as possible for companies to really target the employees of their the mobility of their employees in order to make them better. And we want to reach as many people, as many companies as possible with our software. And that's also what we will focus on in the next few months as much as possible.
And where are you active right now? In which regions or which countries are you active right now?
We do have most of our existing customers in the Germany, Austria, and Switzerland region, but we plan to do an expansion on continental Europe and in the next year or something. And of course, we want to grow bigger at a later stage.
Okay. Maybe one last question around Triply and your competitors. Who are the competitors out there? Like, what differences do you see to them, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the competitive landscape is very interesting, because on the one hand, we see that when it comes to just organizing solutions for mobility in cities, there are a lot of companies that focus on this right now. The field of startups and also established companies providing better mobility solutions in cities is packed full with very interesting topics, very interesting ideas, and also companies that evolve around those ideas. But when it comes to more on the countryside, it feels like the space is a little bit more empty, while there are slowly starting to emerge more and more companies that focus on also improving mobility in rural areas. And that's often focused on very specific topics. There's companies that really are only focused on ride sharing, companies that are only focused on bike sharing and so on. And we know from our experience that for most companies and for most regions, just one system isn't going to be enough. And what we want to provide with Triply is basically a holistic approach of just looking at the whole mobility topic at one region or at one company, so that you can plan as good as possible how different intermodal transport schemes work together in order to plan something that people really want to use. And that isn't only efficient or sustainable, but that people will actually use in the next 1 or 2 years.
Totally. I will ask you a challenging question, Chris. So imagine you are a corporate, or I am a corporate owner, and who's got my sites in Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, Berlin, and maybe in Prague. I've got lots of people working and coming to work every day to my offices. I've got different clients which they have to visit all the time. So why should I actually hire you guys? Why should I contract you guys to help my people move around? They are moving around already somehow, and they can decide how they want to move around. Why should I choose you?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it boils down to what the companies want to emphasize on. I think right now we're seeing a lot of companies that focus mostly on, for instance, CO2 emissions that are caused immediately by their production. But what will definitely come in the future, and it's not yet decided, in my opinion, if that is within the next half year or within the next 5 years, is that companies will also look into how their employees move around and get to their work locations. And I think they do have a lot of leeway there. They can improve travel for their employees a lot, because everybody that is used to commuting to work with public transport knows how good this is if there's a good enough train line, for instance, because you don't always have to spend time in traffic jams. You can read a book, chat with other people, and so on. And I think our role in there is basically being the facilitator for change here. Really the catalyst that brings people and employees to reconsider their mobility behavior and to make this better in the long run. I mean, of course, that's not going to be changes that start just now and are finished within a week, but that's a longer process. And that's what is very interesting when it comes to companies there. But of course, there is a special scenario when we as Triply can be incredibly helpful, and that's when companies aren't just trying to improve mobility at their existing location or at the existing workplace, but especially when they move to other locations. That's always a good starting point to really, before they decide where to buy land or build buildings for their new company locations, to previously already think about how that actually influences their people, how that influences travel behavior and so on.
You're starting to convince me as a corporate owner, but I would wonder, what are the tangible benefits for me? Like for me, it's about cost savings or generating more revenue. That's my main thought every single day, and how I can really build out and pay my employees. How can I do that? Like what benefits am I really receiving by this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, CO2 emissions and costs for companies will probably tie back together within the near future, especially when we're talking about cost of carbon or taxation on carbon emissions. But there's one very immediate benefit for all employees, and that's basically that every company has to, of course, provide parking spaces for their employees. And while this doesn't sound like a big problem for most company owners when they already have parking spaces, especially when you think about how much money you have to pay for renting out parking spaces in the city for all your employees, or for building really new parking infrastructure for a company that has, let's say, a few thousand employees, then that's already becoming a bigger and bigger cost point in the total costs of building this new location.
Okay, you're starting to convince me again. So maybe I want to ask you some questions now about you as a founder and entrepreneur, basically, and I'll ask you quite a few questions here. And remember, audience, remember to post in any questions you have to Chris about his journey, about him being an entrepreneur, or about Triply and mobility. Audience, please ask questions in the chat. So Chris, I always wonder, what drives a founder every day? Like, why do you wake up every day to do this, basically? What's your motivation?
I mean, one thing that I have to that I have to start out with is that even though it might sound cool and everything to have a startup, it's not always fun, and it's not always easy to get up in the morning. But what always motivates me is that, especially when we do have customers and work with them for a longer time, so not just one day workshop or something, but really make a journey of mobility together with them, you can really see how changes impact either a business or employees. And that's really cool. That's what I especially like about our startup here, is that in the end, what we will always do is improve something for other people. No matter if that means for us planning or helping planning a new public transportation system, and then seeing the impact on the people that now commute specific time less to work than usual, or if it means working together with a company and really bringing people that usually drive 5 kilometers with their car to trying this with the bike the first time and then just seeing the improvement that this makes to their lives and to the companies that we work with.
Very good, very good. And how is your relationship with your founder? Like, how did you find each other and how's your relationship?
We are a founder team of originally 2, but then grew right now into a founder team of 3. And my co-founder Sebastian has been a long-term friend of mine. And even though we knew that that was a very bad idea and our friendship probably could have developed a lot differently and we don't have so much spare time together, that has been a very interesting journey together. And that's also why we're really good in just communicating with each other and also openly to other shareholders. And since about a year and a half, we do also have a third co-founder, which basically helps us iron out the biggest deficit of the 2 founders of us, which is that we are both 24, 25 years old. And we do lack kind of the senior experience, especially when it comes to sales and just business development topics. And that's when our co-founder, Gregor, is really helping out with his experience from previous companies and startups.
Okay. What were the funniest moments you have lived together as co-founders? What were the funniest ones?
There have been a lot of funny things, especially when it comes to miscommunications, because that's one thing that we learned the hard way in the early stages of Triply, that sometimes it's very, very important to just always think about what you have just discussed and really bring everybody on the same page. And that's not only concerning co-founders or founders, but also stakeholders as well as the team in general, is that we always have to make sure that it's everything that is communicated is also understood in the same way that it is communicated. We do have a very international team. We are now, I think, 12 people from more than 4 or 5 different countries. And that's really interesting. It has brought some really, really different perspectives on topics, which is great. But of course, with different countries, different backgrounds of people, there often do come communication barriers. And yeah, it's just very important to always make sure that everybody is on the same page and keep everybody updated.
Okay. I know as a German and as an Austrian, it's hard for us to tell funny things, right? You're telling a story here about miscommunication, which is important. But like, what do you say is a funny moment where you guys were just like laughing on the floor, basically? What was a funny situation you had?
Well, we did have some very interesting customers where we basically worked with them for a long time, and then after, let's say, a few months, understood what they really wanted from us. And then we were like, okay, now I got it. But that took some time. But yeah, there's also a lot of things that really were funny for us in the founder team, but I'm not sure how much of that should be said on camera.
That's a good point. Tell us about the worst moment you have had with one of your customers. Like, what was the worst one, or what was the biggest failure you had?
Okay, that's a very good question. So for us, the interesting thing is that we are right now working mostly with different companies where we want to improve mobility situations for companies. But what we also focused on shortly before the start of the Corona pandemic was to improve mobility for events and for festivals. And that has also brought us in contact with a lot of very interesting customers, with a lot of interesting people. And yeah, that of course changed during the Corona pandemic, but that was a very interesting branch, a very interesting part of mobility to work in, because there are sometimes very funny things happen when it comes to drunk people being in buses and so on. So yeah, one of our interesting customer stories was that we did a mobility concept for an event, and then we booked buses and so on, and one of the buses returned with a door being off, and then we had to figure out how to do that with insurances and get everybody on the same page that we kind of like reimburse the bus company for the problems caused on their infrastructure and so on.
I hope you still made some profit on this. I mean, the party audience, let's say, or event audience can be quite challenging.
We didn't make profit, but at least we do have good stories to tell, so that's at least something.
That's a good one. So Chris, tell us about a point you mentioned before. You said you needed some senior, let's say, to bring in some knowledge and to bring in some mentoring for you, especially on sales and business development. I would be curious to ask you, what kind of mentors or help did you look for in your whole journey, let's say? Like, what kind of mentors or help did you have, and what happened? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I think also I have to answer this question in two different ways. So on the one side, we founded our company at the end of 2017, and at the very early stage already participated in two incubators. That was on one side the Social Impact Award, and on the other hand, of course, the Climate Kick Accelerator in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And what has been very important for us, since at that stage we were just a team of two very technically focused founders, was that we get some insight, especially when it comes to, as you said before, and making more senior business decisions, so to say, just so that we as founders don't always have to rely on each other and make all the decisions ourselves, but to get external input on what we already are thinking about, to just kind of like evaluate our thought process, if that makes sense, and so on. And another thing that has been very important was our relationship to our shareholders. We do have a very, very cool team of investors that consists both of very technical people, university professors, of people that have a lot of experience with sales, with marketing, and more senior businessmen. And I think that has also helped us a lot on our journey to just learn from the mistakes of others, so that we don't have to make all of them ourselves.
if you could mention one name, like, of the best mentor or shareholder you had, who would it be, the number one?
I mean, that's a very hard question. One shareholder that has been a part of us, a part of Triply for the whole time, was Thomas Blaschke, who's a university professor at the University of Salzburg. And he has been very helpful in not only giving like technical feedback and so on, but just trusting in the whole idea and team behind Triply. And that's always very, very helpful when it comes to building a startup, especially at the early stage when everything's just changing at a rapid pace. And after every half year, the company looks a little bit different and so on.
Okay, very good, and good to name him. One last question maybe on you and your future plans. How do you see yourself in this business in the future? How do you see Triply moving ahead in the future? What do you think?
Yeah, so maybe just as a general note on Triply, my co-founder Sebastian is currently acting as the CEO and I'm acting as the CTO of Triply. But while that is in most companies two very, very separate roles, we know that at Triply we do make all the important decisions as the two or three of each other, as the founder team. And that's also what we really do want to keep up for the future, is to just have consistency within the founder team and be able to communicate good and make decisions together. Yes, but what's most important for me personally is that we want to, at Triply, grow our team and be able to just integrate more people and serve as many companies as possible in order to just make a good impact in general.
Okay, very good. And how do you see your team in this whole role? What should your team look like in the future?
I think we did a really good job of building our team right now. I mean, as I said, it's very international. It's also currently still lacking, but still a bit on the male-dominated side, since that's of course the technical and software development field, and that's always a problem. But we're working on it. One thing that we definitely always want to keep in mind when it comes to building our team is just to make it as diverse, international, and fill it with motivated people. I think that's actually the most important thing. No matter who comes to us, who applies for us, it's very important that they're not just somebody that wants to do their job, but somebody that really wants to make an impact. And I think that's also basically what it means to work at a startup, especially in the sustainability branch.
So I want to ask one specific question there on recruitment. What do you usually care about, and where are your goes or no-goes to hire a specific person?
Okay, what we usually care about is a very good question, because initially when we started recruiting for our first employees, we really did take a very in-depth look at what degrees people have, what is officially on their CVs. And that's, I think, one of the biggest insights that we have gained. during the recent years, and that's that what's on paper written about the person still is a good starting point, but how the person behaves, how the person is, how the person can communicate and feels like when you talk to him or her is always a very important thing. So like, this is very hard for recruiting, but the personal connection is always very important. And I think especially during the Corona crisis with a lot of remote working, that of course has gotten a little bit lost, but we're hoping that this changes in the future and that we can bring as many people as possible, not only into our team, but also into our team in a physical sense.
Okay, very good. I think I like these criteria. Remember, audience, to ask Chris a lot of questions. We are collecting these questions. I will ask 1 or 2 more questions to Chris, and then we will give time for your questions to ask them to Chris directly. Chris, looking at the future again, let's say in 5 years, how would you describe Triply, and how much impact did Triply have on our planet in 5 years? What do you think?
Okay, 5 years is a very interesting time span, because in my opinion, that's exactly in the middle between thinking about in the long and in the short term, so to say. But I hope that within the 5 years, in the next 5 years, we are, as a company, at a point where we can say that we are the de facto standard for planning mobility for companies and also for regions. And that how that exactly works isn't clear for all of us right now. But what's important for us is that we are an objective planning framework, basically, that gives a connection between a lot of mobility providers that already exists and that provide, car sharing, bike sharing, and different solutions, and interface with them and companies, for instance, or regions that would really pay for these services in order to be able to just fit them together as tightly and as good as possible to provide a good ecosystem and not just different isolated services that do not work with each other.
Okay, very good. I like that vision. I think we're here to support you in that journey. Before we come to the questions, Chris, shoot out 1 message per audience. What do you want to say to them? What should you say, and what message do you want to give to governments out there?
Okay, yeah, I think for governments, our most important message is to always keep the people in mind. It's very good if infrastructure is improving, if new mobility services are planned and organized, but what's the most important is how people use them, and to really bring people to actually also switch their mobility behavior and not only provide different services that some people may or may not need.
What's your message to investors or shareholders out there?
Okay, that's a really hard one, because I think we're really lucky with the investors that we already have. Yeah, but to general investors, I think the most important message from my side is to just really help your companies, try to communicate with them as much as possible and tell them what you want, because at least from a startup perspective, it's not always easy to understand what the exact requirements and needs and questions for the startup are. So you can make communicating a lot easier if you also do it proactively from your side.
Okay. What is your message to corporates out there? Big ones, small ones, whomever.
Okay, my message to corporates is that now is the time. In 5 years, thinking about how your people and your goods move around might be too late. Now is the time when you can really take it into your own hand and organize mobility for your employees or for your general logistics as good as possible. And if you're interested in a solution that helps you do that, just please get in contact with me.
Very good, very good. And what's your message to the entrepreneurs and climate innovators out there we're celebrating this week?
Yeah, my message to all the climate entrepreneurs is you're doing a good job. We are all doing a good job, I think I have to say, but it's not enough. And we should all become more, and everybody that is not yet a climate entrepreneur or in general an entrepreneur that wants to make something better for the people and the community, now is the time as well.
Very good, very good. What about these ClimAccelerators we're supporting, we're trying to help to scale and help you scale as an entrepreneur? What should we say to them?
I think I can start with a general answer to this question for Climate Kick, and that's thank you. You're already doing great. But what's very important is to not only have a bubble of climate startups, but to really bring them in contact with industries that also would work together and help scale up these businesses and not just let them grow in a bubble and then bust.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, Chris, let me check out the questions right now. I will check them out, I will read them through, and give me like a minute, basically, and then I will start asking you these questions, all right? Audience, feel free to add a few more. Just give me 1 second. So, Chris, we've got at least 4 questions, and I have some more in mind as well. The first one is coming in from Sarah. What startup or business are you looking up to as an inspiration?
Okay, that's a really good question. I can't name one single startup. What's always very interesting to me is startups that are able to not only focus on sustainability or not only focus on business, on making money, but I think the interesting thing here, and that is of course especially important for the whole climate focused startups, is to combine these two things. Because when it comes to impact investing, impact is usually defined as something that is like an impact per piece and how many of these pieces you sell, you make. And I think startups that are able to really provide very good impact, but for different areas, but don't manage to sell them, are really nice on paper, but usually not what will really solve the climate crisis and make the whole world better in the future. And I think that's the most important thing, to really combine sustainability and business aspects in companies.
Okay, very good. I will add one more question to this one. What are the most inspiring entrepreneurs as people for you? You may name one or more.
That's a really hard question for me. I think there isn't really somebody that comes to my mind as this per se, but I would follow it up with something similar beforehand. I think entrepreneurs that really can keep the bigger picture in focus and do not really just focus on one part of their business, but are able to just build the whole thing with internal consistency, so that you feel that the whole company just is one thing that works together and doesn't just have different aspects that work on each own, but really work together as good as possible. And that's what I look very up to when it comes to different entrepreneurs and people.
Okay. Then we have the next question coming up. What was the biggest mistake you learned from in your business?
Okay, my biggest mistake in the business, and I think not only mine, but our as Triply biggest mistake, was to develop something and not listen to your customers. I think that was the biggest insight as well, where we now know that as soon as we develop new products, new features, we always have to be able to get in contact with people that actually pay for it, or that we work with on a daily basis, and see if they need it, and if so, how we can make it as easy as possible for them to use. And I think that's also something that is very important on the topic of mobility, that it doesn't always, it's not always only about making stuff more efficient, more ecologically or economically sustainable, but sometimes it's really about thinking about how the end customer or people that really want to get from A to B will use a certain system. Because if you make something very efficient, but nobody uses it, it's still useless.
Good. And I think many entrepreneurs are doing that mistake, and they should learn from what you just said. I think I totally agree. The next question is coming in, and it's more about what are funding opportunities and investment opportunities for your business? What do you think?
You mean for startup in general, or for my business in the future?
Yeah, both.
Yeah, I think what's very important is to use existing funding or just help infrastructure that exists in your local country. I mean, in Austria, we are very lucky to be covered, and especially in Linz as well, here where we are based at Tripoli, to be covered with many cool institutions, and that is accelerators like ClimAccelerator. It's business agencies like BizUp or Tech2B that also sometimes offer consulting to small companies. So really here, the biggest point for me would be to just try to get in contact with your local startup people, your local startup agencies or accelerators, and try to get into them, because that's always a very important starting point. And these people usually know a lot more than me about what you have as different funding or grant opportunities in your local area, because that sometimes differs great a lot between countries and even within countries. In Austria, it's a very different question. Yeah, but then looking forward into the future, I think for us, it was also very important insight to be careful when you're working with business angels, because just because somebody wants to give you money, that often doesn't mean that he's exactly on the same page as you. And especially when it comes to climate-focused businesses, it's always very important to really find business angels, or at a later stage also VCs, that do not only believe in the fact that your company can be successful, but also believe that your company can be successful with the same ideas behind it, with the same ideas being, for instance, in this case, you may want to make a climate impact while scaling up your business and making money, and not just focus on making money.
Totally agree as well. I mean, where did you find your current shareholders and investors? Where or how did you find them?
I think also in our case, what I just said with getting contacts through different accelerators or through our local network has been very important, because we did have discussions with a lot of different shareholders, and also, of course, some of those discussions didn't turn out so well. And that's one very important insight that I actually would give on the way to a lot of people, that when your funding talks do turn in a bad way, and for instance, you realize that the business angel or the VC that you're talking to doesn't want to support the same idea or wants you to build your company differently than you as a founding team do, then that's very good, because then at least you did find this disagreement before you enter a contract with them or to get a little bit of money from them, and then that agreement would be very bad at a later stage otherwise.
I think I've seen lots of entrepreneurs who have raised investments in different kinds but have failed because of these reasons you were just mentioning. I mean, there really needs to be a good alignment between both sides. One question I have is, do you also ask for advice from other entrepreneurs in these programs or in your region? Like, do you talk to each other? Are you connected in some way?
Yes, of course we are connected, and I think ClimAccelerator, for instance, is doing a really good job, at least pre-corona, with video calls. Everything is getting less and less interesting. It's not so easy to just meet fellow entrepreneurs to grab a beer or two together. But for us, that's also been a good source of both inspiration, feedback, and also, well, getting to know about mistakes that we then at a later stage don't have to do ourselves, to just network or talk to other founders that are in a similar situation as you, or even at a later stage, because that, of course, also brings a lot of insight.
Okay, perfect. I know your business is about mobility, but today is our water theme and water day. What do you do personally or within Tripoli to help us utilize water in the best way and maybe even save water? What do you think?
That's a very good question, and I think in Austria here we are at a very privileged place when it comes to water usage and so on. So I think that's really a topic that hasn't been on my mind so much in the last few years and so on. But I think that's something that I will, and we as a company probably will also think about more in the near future.
Okay, perfect. I think these were all of the questions we have had. Chris, thank you for this time. Thank you for participating in here, Chris. And I think the audience had some good advice to listen to. Thanks for your time. And we will be continuing now soon with a panel around how we are boosting climate and entrepreneurship in Africa. And to do so, we will show you a quick video. So Chris, thank you and have a good one.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye.
And audience, please listen in right now to Ajub and what he's got to say about what we're doing within Africa with our ClimAccelerator efforts. See you soon at 1 p.m. We will be starting the panel then. See you soon.
My name is Daube, and I'm the project manager for Accelerate Climate Tech Solutions for a Net Zero Africa. The African continent contributes the least in carbon emission. However, it's the continent that is suffering the most from climate change. The ClimAccelerator in Africa is targeting the best climate innovations within the continent. It can help the entrepreneurs develop their business model to help them reach more market development within the continent, and finally to help them fundraise in order to take their innovation to the next step. If you have a great climate-oriented business idea and you are interested in taking your business to the next stages, please apply to the ClimAccelerator Africa.
Welcome everyone and hello again to our week of action. In this session we will be talking about what we are doing with our ClimAccelerators in Africa. But before I introduce the session, let's talk a bit more about us. I'm Christian Daube, I'm leading the ClimAccelerator efforts and I'm working for EIT Climate Kick. EIT Climate Kick is focused on generating knowledge and innovations with our community of partners in Europe and all over the world to move towards a climate positive and very climate resilient world as soon as possible. That's our main mission and vision, and that's what we are all here for basically, right? This panel will be about how we are boosting climate entrepreneurship in Africa, how we are helping innovations to scale up. And that's what we are celebrating in this week of action. These innovators and all of you entrepreneurs out there who are fighting climate change and are helping to impact our planet in a very positive way. So please, audience, during the session, remember you can ask questions, be curious, ask all of our panelists whatever you want to ask them. Could be challenging questions as well. And remember our hashtag of the session. Our hashtag is destination 1.5. Again, hashtag destination 1.5, where you can talk about what you're doing in water, for example. What are your innovations and ideas you're working on in your scaling when it comes to water? Post them in there and we will have a look later on. So, I believe I have my panelists in the session right now. Let us introduce Judith, Abdelrahman, and Martin coming in. Welcome all of you. How are you doing? Good,
Hello.
good.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks for having you. And I would like to ask you to introduce yourselves. Ladies first. Judith, go first. Introduce yourself and also say where you're based and where you're active.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Judith. I'm the Global Program Manager for the Westerwelle Foundation, and we're based in Berlin. We're an NGO with the mission to uplift emerging economies through empowered entrepreneurship. So what does this mean? We're building co-working spaces and communities in cities where there's a high potential for innovation, but a gap in innovation support services. So we currently have the Westerwelle Startup House Kigali. We also have the Westerwelle Startup House Tunis, and we're also opening up hubs in Tanzania and across Africa as well currently. And so alongside these co-working spaces, we're also creating accelerators and incubators to accompany the ecosystem development. And this is where I come in to work with the local program managers, and we're working together with the ClimAccelerator and Climate Kick to bring in climate-targeted acceleration services as well.
Thank you. Martin, go next.
Thanks, Christian. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Kiilu. I work for Growth Africa. So we are an accelerator headquartered in Nairobi, but with presence across 6 countries. That's Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Ghana, Malawi, and Zambia. And what we do is we support entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses through offering acceleration services, access to investments, and access to networks. And we are proud to be the implementing partner for the Africa ClimAccelerator. And through this, we are looking at supporting 15 startups from across the continent with acceleration services supported by the Climate Kick Foundation. Growing the community of climate-focused ventures across the continent.
Perfect. Very good to hear. Thanks, Martin. Abdelrahman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. It's a pleasure to be with you here, Judith and Martin as well. So my name is Abdelrahman Fahmy. I'm based in Egypt, Cairo, and I've been working with youthinkgreen, which is a social business for more than 8 years right now. We are working to support the Egyptian ecosystem towards the sustainable transformation through consulting, training, capacity building, and project management. We do diverse projects in schools, in entrepreneurship, training in businesses, and also in consulting for the government. And for more than 3 years right now, we have been partnering with Climate Kick in diverse projects, Climathon, Climate Launchpad, and most recently the Climate Accelerator. So we are one of the core business that we work in is to support entrepreneurs and businesses to transform towards much more net zero climate impact and also sustainable value chains. This is what is our core business in Egypt, and hopefully also will expand to the region with our impact very soon.
Perfect. Thank you. And remember, we have a broad audience in here of entrepreneurs and partners all over the world. So let's kick off this panel with some questions about what is happening in your area in the countries you're active in when it comes to entrepreneurship and climate. Let's talk about that first, and then we will start opening up questions to discuss and debate all of us together. So Judith, maybe, you mentioned quite a few countries where you're active in. Tell us a bit more, what's happening in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I'll talk about, first of all, the climate ecosystem and entrepreneurship ecosystem as a whole, and then maybe dive into a bit the patterns we're seeing amongst the startups and entrepreneurs themselves. So as you know, the climate ecosystem is really a subset of the general innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in these regions. So definitely there are the same mirrored effects within the ecosystem. So for example, in Kigali, where we see a lot of public and private funding and support for startups in general, this trickles down into the climate ecosystem for more opportunities and recognitions of the climate entrepreneurs. Whereas in Tunis, where there's been recent political instability and also uncertainty in the international community, we see also thus less sector-specific support for the entrepreneurs within the climate sphere in general. However, regardless of the actual state of the ecosystem right now and the challenges, we do see a lot of amazing ideas surrounding climate mitigation and adaptation. So we would say in general, compared to maybe European solutions, within our regions, we see a lot more B2C targeted, maybe hardware solutions, really trying to solve daily problems of everyday citizens and consumers. So some examples are green charcoal, a lot surrounding cooking in general, solar energy solutions for schools and households, and even in Tunis, we saw Kiilu, which is a startup trying to get drinking water out of the atmosphere. So this is quite different from European solutions, which often focus on automation or the value chain or B2B solutions. So I find that quite interesting as a difference.
What's your role in there, Judith, with Westerwelle Foundation? And how do you help them? What's your role?
Yes. So our role is mainly to, first of all, connect a bit the European and the African ecosystems. So basically, we try to create awareness in Africa on some research and topics that are super hot currently. And vice versa, we're trying to generate traction in terms of investment, specifically from the private sector, and funding into the African ecosystems. So really trying to connect it globally, and in that way, support through capacity building, mentorship, and access to finance.
Okay, very good. And we'll be talking about challenges of startups in your area very soon. Martin, maybe tell us a bit more about what's happening, let's say, in the different countries you're active in, like in Eastern Africa. What's happening in there, and what's your role in this whole play?
No, thanks, Christian. And I think just to echo what has just been said. So there is a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship activity across the countries that we're based in. More so in East Africa, led by Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia. And in terms of the solutions we are seeing a lot of solutions that are homegrown and meeting the day-to-day needs of the population. So as Judith had just mentioned, things around cooking, clean cook stoves, looking at electricity, the pay-as-you-go solar systems, that just kind of bring in aspects of increased standards of living for the day-to-day. And when you look at agriculture, most of the countries across Africa, we are still heavily an agricultural focused continent. And so even innovations in agriculture, how do you use water more efficiently? How do you increase productivity? And innovators and entrepreneurs have actually taken the call to actually solve for these challenges on the continent, using both homegrown solutions as well as bringing models and technologies from across the world and looking at how to adapt and utilize them on the continent. And so, to that extent, you do have a lot of climate mitigation and adaptation tools, and also financing and even models of how do you do things such as crop insurance indexes, livestock insurance indexes, in terms of mitigating the effects of climate change to that part of the community and of these countries that are either largely agri, both in terms of arable land or in livestock. So there is a lot of innovation, and where we do come in, and what Growth Africa has been playing a part in, is actually supporting innovators and entrepreneurs in these areas, kind of fine tune their businesses and help them steer them towards a scalable path for their businesses. So looking at innovating around business models, innovating around access to market, and then also linking them to funding, and because that's still a big and critical gap on the continent where you do have lots of innovations and maybe not enough funding to match it.
Very good, very good. Thanks, Martin. And Abdelrahman, how is Egypt different to the other regions we just talked about? What do you think? What's your role in there,
Yes.
Abdelrahman?
Yeah, thank you, Christian. So, yes, entrepreneurship in general have been evolving since the revolution back in 2011, and I have to say also since 2015 and the launching of the SDGs, Egypt have committed to a strategy by 2030 and 2050, which is an ambitious strategy and a very good strategy for sustainability transformation. But I have to say that climate change wasn't until recently a topic of discussion among the ecosystem here, whether on a governmental level or a business level. I think also one of the outcomes of the COVID pandemic that people started to witness how global crisis like health crisis and climate crisis can affect us badly, and how resilient is our infrastructure locally. And I think right now the situation is very different after the COVID. So the discussions on climate change and climate innovation is completely different. It's very heated right now. Egypt most probably will be hosting the Convention of Parties next year for the UNFCCC. Egypt is not among the world's largest polluters, but we are among the world's most vulnerable countries to climate change. Any effect on water shortages, soil salinity, rise in temperature, anything like that will affect more than 100 million inhabitants or citizens at the way. So our ecosystem right now, whether businesses or startups, are expected to start or not expected, they are encouraged actually to start the climate momentum in innovation, in agriculture, in water shortages, in energy, and many other topics that is currently on discussion. And our role is potentially to start the engine. So we help the entrepreneurs and we help the business to get together and discuss what is the challenges ahead, how we can solve these challenges in a business and sustainable way, and then help them to get the required resources, whether training, financials, or business linkages. And this is what we are trying to do. So the situation changed over the years. First, sustainability was a major topic here in Egypt. Now it has been growing talks about climate change and climate adaptation, if I may say. So this is the situation and our role in Egypt right now.
Okay. Very good to hear from all three of you basically how your regions look like and what's happening in there. And I think when you look at the impact of the climate crisis, 7 out of 10 countries who are most impacted are actually in Africa. So thank you for you three really to be active in that space and to help entrepreneurs. So I want to ask one question, and please, each of you, you'll have 2 answers to say, very short ones. What are the main barriers for startups in your regions? And remember, we have lots of entrepreneurs in the audience. So what are the main barriers for them to really advance or really like scale, let's say? Judith, go ahead.
So I'll try to make it quick, but I think I have three main barriers. First of all, I think in general, even though Abdelrahman has just talked about, climate awareness and knowledge regarding the challenges of sustainability, I still think there's a lot to be done in terms of this part, because I think people are vaguely aware of this being a problem and a global problem, but there's still not enough knowledge in terms of the exact sciences and also market opportunities and the research that's out there. And for example, some of the basics that I learned in elementary school on the ozone layer or the basics of climate change, I was surprised to see that sometimes it was not within the curriculum and not a given locally. So this is, I think, something very important still. Second of all, I think when we come to KPI measurements, this is something that is really tough to do, even when you have automated solutions, and something that we're working on, all around the world still. And when you come to these homegrown solutions, these B2C solutions, that's even harder to measure the exact CO2 mitigation and the exact impact throughout the value chain. So I think it's really important to find a kind of user-friendly way to measure the actual impact. And then finally, kind of hand in hand is a need for more patient financing, because we see a lot of our entrepreneurs and climate entrepreneurs within the accelerator programs. They're struggling most of all with financial viability. If you don't have a commercially viable product or customers, then you can't really proceed with your solution and idea. So if we want more people to focus on the specifics of climate mitigation and innovation, it's really important to provide that patient financing so that these entrepreneurs can actually work towards it instead of worrying about the revenue generation all the time.
Martin, add different ones. Add two different ones, Martin, to what Judith just said. And I think I totally agree to what Judith says.
Yeah, maybe to add on to what Judith has said, I think one of the other key challenges that businesses face in this sector is government regulation and government participation in the discussion around climate change and support of the solutions that are being brought up. Well, you do find that some of the sectors that businesses have to work in are highly regulated. Talk about the energy space, talk about water, talk about agriculture. And so government participation in that discussion around climate mitigation and even lowering the barriers for some of these new technologies to come in is something that hasn't been as widespread and as broad on board as it should be. The other thing that I would say is around consumer behavior. And just to along what Judith mentioned in terms of the continent and then the end user or even government, because they are a user to some extent. A lot of climate technology and solutions are dependent on the change of behavior patterns of the populace, of the citizenry of the populace of the continent. And that is a bit harder to come by, and we are seeing changes in it. There is a rising awareness, but in terms of behavior change, I think that becomes one of the key barriers to some of the solutions being picked up as fast as they should be, or even to contribute to a great extent of what the eventual impact has been thought about or modeled to be. A third challenge, I'd say, is not external, but more internal to the businesses and to the entrepreneurs bringing about solutions, is the choice of business model and affordability of solutions that are being presented. We are in a continent where a large part of the population is still living below the poverty line. And so they are the most affected when you talk about climate change. And they then become the first people that do need to be supported in accessing different technologies to aid in their lives and to aid them mitigate the challenges. And so pricing, affordability, and the business model that entrepreneurs do choose to attract this category is very important. And it's not to say that there's nothing that has happened. I think for East Africa, looking at things such as the pay-as-you-go model is something that has really supported in this, whereby now you have a family not using kerosene to light their homes at night. Uh, but then it had to come with a bill and a financing option that was able to allow this families living at the BOP to actually afford and take up the solutions and move away from kerosene, charcoal, and the likes as their main sources of energy.
Very good. And I think, yeah, I mean, I can add a few more, but Abdelrahman, give us the last two challenges and barriers you see.
Yes, I would say definitely the access to technology and the research and development done in the institutions or the universities, it's really, really behind and lacking. I mean, innovations done in the north might not be suitable in the south and vice versa. So unfortunately, entrepreneurs struggle, and this is from my experience, struggle to have a tech advanced and a tech-enabled ecosystem for their innovations, which is very, very challenging. Number two, is the market maturity. So, for example, if you are opening a business in the logistics or in the digital ecosystem, you might have the opportunity to scale in other countries very easily. Go to the Gulf, go to the African MENA region, whatever, from Egypt here. The market is growing and it's very linked and interconnect. But on the climate innovation, it's not like that. So how on earth am I a business? I'm going to start to forecast my growth, and I don't know how the market will grow actually in my region. This is very challenging and depressing actually, because it's not uniform. It's not a uniform growth. It's not a forecasted growth. And this is also due to the lack of coordinated efforts and lack of sharing the knowledge and the issues that happening in the region that has to do with climate innovation. So those two challenges, additional definitely to what my colleague said, those are the main challenges that are faced by climate entrepreneurs in Egypt and I think in Africa as well.
I think I can totally agree to this, but what can we do about this? So what can you guys do and what opportunities can we give to these entrepreneurs to do about this? And then I want you to agree between all three of them on one main message we want to give out there. What do you guys think? Judith, go ahead. Open microphone.
Wow, it's really hard to, I think, agree on one main message. In that case, I'm gonna add on and say that this coordinated effort is really important. So coordinated effort in terms of, national governments, international governments, also private sector and public sector. This is super important. And right now it's still very fragmented. And I think when we talk about climate innovation in Africa, it's still kind of a niche topic within, like I said, sub-ecosystems. So just continuing to raise awareness across and seeing what are the roles of all the actors. I think that would be my one big suggestion, but I'm really curious about what Martin and Abdelrahman have to say.
Well, I'll put my vote in with what Judith has said, and basically say, for most of the challenges, when you look at it needs a collaborative effort, and it needs multiple partners to be on the table to discuss and solve this. Be it regulation, be it for access to finance, access to research. I think it needs to come from a point where no one entrepreneur can solve all the challenges, and any one entrepreneur going against the challenge.
I think we just lost Martin. Abdelrahman, go ahead.
Yes.
Maybe you want to add something to Martin, yeah?
Yes. I think we all agree, as Judith said, that the coordinated efforts is something very important. And we are here in a Climate Kick event, and Climate Kick is all about coordinated effort across Europe. So it was across Europe. Now it's a global and worldwide. I think this is the answer to our question. If there is a coordinated effort across the continent in Africa, sharing knowledge, sharing solutions, sharing resources, connecting people with each other, this is what we need actually. And then the market will evolve, technology will be easily transferred, the investments will be interchanged. So that's I think the connected effort and connectivity between the region. Unfortunately, we are not quite connected, although we share the same challenges, we share the same. We are very near in economic situations. Okay, we are not very different, but yet we are, I don't know, for example, unless for some personal efforts, I don't know what's happening in other countries, far in South Africa, for example. This is very bad because we share the same climate vulnerability. We have resources, we have capacities and everything, but we need to coordinate with each other. We need to work and support each other on a much more deeper basis. Yeah.
Totally. And Martin, we just lost you for a second, but you were about to say how this coordination, how this collaboration could work. Maybe you can add your last thoughts on this.
Sorry about that. No, so in terms of coordination, I think bringing together the different actors across the continent, governments, private sector, investors, would really be key. I think one of the challenges that Africa, part of East and the Horn of Africa basically was facing during COVID as well, was a locust invasion. And you then had the fact that countries had to come together and look at solutions to stop it and to stem it from even going further down south. And so I think in the rise of challenges and the pandemic, as COVID has shown us, then you're able to bring more people together to the same table to find a common solution. And I think that's what is needed at this time.
So Judith, what do you think about these two messages? I mean, you're based in Germany, active in very different African countries. I mean, how would you connect with these guys in these countries? What do you think?
Listen, again, it's very hard on the how, because also if you look at it, each mechanism or each wave of awareness building, it has to trickle down through the existing mechanisms and somehow shift a bit in the existing ecosystem. So I would say, for example, in Climate Kick, if you have, and also the SDGs, when you have a main message, these are the focal points that we want to really hone in on. This is going to help the ecosystem also react because it takes time. And so I would say make the message very simple. And yeah, as we see with the SDGs and somehow with also the Climate Kick efforts, it's getting there, but maybe we can also make it a bit more specific to climate. What exactly are the types of innovations we should focus on, globally and pertaining to Africa? What are the upcoming financing opportunities? What are investors interested in? What should also governments or NGOs then prepare the startups and the entrepreneurs towards? I think this would be very important to have this simple yet specific message to be put out there.
Very good, very good. And Martin, I want to ask you about your Africa ClimAccelerator. I mean, you are looking for startups from all over Africa. How can you make sure that you can really support them and that you can really reach out to them and get their attention?
Well, one of the things that we are looking to do, and we have actually started doing, is looking for partners across Africa to recommend innovations and solutions in their part of Africa that can be part and can benefit from the Africa ClimAccelerator. And towards that, we are also looking at leveraging our extensive network across Africa of experts and mentors to support businesses in the regions that they're in. And one thing I think Abdelrahman had mentioned is around solutions in one part of the continent might not be the same or easily adaptable, even replicable in other parts. And so what we're looking at is for solutions across the continent, but also give them localized expert mentorship and support that are sector and geography relevant, but also looking at leveraging the partners in the implementation of this. So we have two partners coming to implement the accelerator, and that's Growth Africa and the Carbon Trust. And the Carbon Trust working across different continents and having over 20 years of expertise in this, bringing the international network of mentors and experts to support also these companies, so that we're also building an international solutions with the local applicability and replicability across the continent.
Very good, very good. And I think that's a good approach. Abdelrahman, how can you connect now with Martin, and how can you connect with Judith and what they're going to do? What do you think?
Yes, really, in countries like Tunisia and also South Africa and Western East Africa, I think there is a lot of opportunities to collaborate. Egypt have startups who can scale their innovations there, but also we can have startups from other countries who can scale their businesses here. Also, I think we have to work all collectively on the raising the awareness, as Judith said, and also educating the investors and the people who are pouring money into this continent, because I think this is one of the major challenges. We have to work all on this. People barely started to understand what is impact investment, which is much more in detail rather than the climate investment. So we need to multiply our efforts. Definitely, we have also circulated the Climate Accelerator Africa call for our startups to join. This will be a great opportunity to connect with other fellow businesses. And I think Startup House Tunisia with Westerwelle Foundation, they are more than welcome to work in Egypt as well. There is a lot of opportunity for Westerwelle Foundation to work in Egypt. I think they have a couple of projects, and it would be great to collaborate all together. And we are starting also our Climate Accelerator very soon in Egypt, and we are looking forward for this. It will be the very first specialized climate accelerator in Egypt, focusing on climate innovation, and we want to bring as many partners as possible to contribute to this accelerator and create momentum. Definitely we will definitely have to collaborate to achieve something all together.
Judith and Martin, is this a thumbs up to what Abdelrahman's saying, or you're like, no, I dislike it, I don't like it? What do you think?
Absolutely. It's so great to hear also the great energy and the collaboration going around here. And I hope we take this discussion also beyond the panel.
That's what we're here for. I will make sure that we follow up on this afterwards. Before we go to the questions of the audience, which we will have some time for, Judith, Martin, Abdelrahman, what would be the number one advice you would give to entrepreneurs and also to investors in your areas? What do you think? A short phrase.
For me, it's very simple. Just do it. I mean, for the African potential entrepreneurs, just know that there's so much work to be done, but it means also so much potential in terms of green innovation in the continent. So the solution is really the local talent. So I would say, get in touch with the ClimAccelerator, with Westerwelle Foundation, if you're in the countries that we're operating in, to see, what are these market opportunities that could be good to get started with. And also for investors, we hear a lot from, let's say, European investors that they would love to learn more about and get active in the African ecosystem, but they have no idea how, and it's so different. But actually, it's just about getting in touch with a local hub or investment association or a startup, and just starting. So action is the key, I think.
Martin, go ahead.
For the entrepreneurs, I'd say, there is support all around you. You are not alone, and we are here to support, and there are many more of us, and there is a community growing to support entrepreneurs in this space. And so it's not a journey that you need to walk alone. it's as easy as all these accelerators, what Westerwelle is doing, what Abdelrahman is doing in Egypt, what we're doing in different parts of the continent. There is support. And so reach out and support will be given. To the investors, I'd say, looking at what traditionally has been one of the key things that investors have said, there is no pipeline or there is no investment return. I think there is nothing better to bet on than climate and solving a problem for the whole continent. It will pay back. You do have to be a bit patient, but everything, every sector, every growth opportunity across the continent will not exist if we then have a starving, rain-deprived Africa. And so it's in your best interest to actually save the continent, save the climate, mitigate all the solutions, because then businesses will be born out of this, and this is the long term and this is the future.
I totally agree.
For me, I've been saying this message for years now for the entrepreneurs. Be value oriented. Focus on your value proposition. Products changes, services changes, business model changes, everything changes, but value doesn't change. Value is what every investor is looking into the startup. Are they creating value or not? And whatever pandemics or whatever crisis happens, if a business is value oriented, they will never fail. They will thrive and continue. This is for the entrepreneurs, to be value oriented. For the investors, we have all seen how the economy was hit by this global pandemic crisis. And luckily, we were able, as a global community, to control this pandemic by restrictions and many, many measures. But unfortunately, climate crisis is uncontrollable. So if you're not willing to invest now in this and mitigate and adapt to what can be happening in the future, we can lose our whole economy without any control like we did in the pandemic. The pandemic was controllable in a way. Climate crisis, unfortunately, won't be controllable. This is number one advice. And number two, Africa is very resourceful. I think Africa is the future for innovation and businesses. We have to keep the momentum going on and build on what is happening in this continent. It's very rich in resources and human capital, and now is the time, I think, to receive the proper attention from the global community. This is the two messages that I would like to convey.
I think I really like your messages, and I hope the audience likes the messages as well. Give me 1 minute, I will check out the questions our audience have, and then I will start asking you these questions directly. So give me a minute and we'll be back. Okay, here I'm back right now. We've got a couple of questions coming in. The first one, and you choose who responds to this one. how to balance development and climate mitigation and adaptation in Africa. How can we balance both sides? Who wants to go first?
Maybe I can go. I think they are complementary to each other. Development doesn't oppose climate mitigation and adaptation. We can develop, yet in a climate-friendly way, whether through mitigation activities or adaptation activities. I mean, we are very rich in solar energy and renewable energy in general. So if we develop this, our capacities in renewable energy, we are developing, and on the other side, we are climate mitigation, securing climate mitigation. Also, our infrastructure, sanitation, waste management, and everything, they are not developed in many regions across Africa. So this will also increase our resilience and adaptability to any climate change circumstances. But also in the other hand, it will help us in the sustainable development. So I think there shouldn't be a balance between both. They are both complementing each other and both supporting each other.
I can see Judith nodding and Martin saying yes as well, right? Or do you want to add any contrary point to this one?
Maybe I can just add in terms of potentially the lack or the slow development in Africa is actually a big opportunity to develop climate within the development itself. We do not have to go through the path that other continents have taken that ended up, bringing about much of what we're dealing with now. Look at it as Africa does not have to build a nuclear power plant. We can build solar farms. We can build wind farms. We don't have to move to be solely reliant on oil and gas. We can jump on the bandwagon of actually going electric at this point. We do not have to use the same paths to development that other continents have. And so I think it's just reframing our development to look at it. We need to chart a new path to development and not do what other continents have done before.
Very good, very good. I like this add-on. Thanks, Martin. Next question, maybe that's one for Judith. Considering it's one of the areas with fewer emissions in the world, are African green startups really having an impact on global scale?
This is a really interesting question. I think it's, as I've been saying, as one of the barriers, it's very hard to pinpoint that, let's say, the climate issue is a fault of this continent or that continent, because supply chains are very, very linked nowadays. So in terms of also the impact of climate innovation in Africa, I would say, first of all, the biggest impact that you can definitely see is these adaptation technologies and solutions. So that's something that you can definitely take at face value. And so when we talk about 7 out of 10 countries most vulnerable to the catastrophes of climate change being in Africa, obviously this is thus a huge focus in terms of the technologies and products that are developed locally in Africa. So I would say this you can take at face value. And then when it comes to this whole complex mess of trying to evaluate, emissions and where is the source of these emissions, this is something that we still need to work on. And definitely that means that there's need for more innovation with regards to the African continent in the climate context.
Okay. Very good. I like this answer. And the next question is, how do you see the entrepreneurship landscape evolving in Africa in the next 5 years? And maybe Martin go first, and then Abdelrahman again.
Well, I think in terms of the next 5 years of the landscape, we're going to see a lot more in homegrown innovations coming up. What we are seeing now is a budding entrepreneurship community building in the younger generation, and who are hungry to actually solve local problems, their day-to-day challenges, solving problems for the community around them. And so this, I think, is going to be the trend over the next 5 years. Then the other thing that I'm seeing is that there will be an awakening of capital within the continent, which right now we have a lot of capital coming into the continent. But I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of capital being generated within the continent. So African investors investing in African companies and African solutions. And kind of this is actually what is needed, because then the capital will understand the challenges and the problems being solved for, and will be able to kind of also be more appropriately structured to support that.
Abdelrahman, do you want to add one last point?
Answering the question, I think if we look, for example, in the and how it evolved in Africa. Initially, it was, some people didn't have access to any digital payment solutions or anything. They were very, for example, in this. Now you can find in some African cities technology that is equivalent to the most advanced fin technology available in, for example, Europe or USA or whatever. I think this is the forecast also for the climate change. So being a country with very, very limited infrastructure and limited technology, I won't be surprised that in 5 years, some startups will be able to install tech advanced solutions and products that has to do with climate mitigation and adaptation in Africa. So I think this is to explain the potential of Africa, how it will look like. It's very, very virgin, but have a lot of potential once used properly and invested in properly. Like the fintech, which is a living example of how fintech have evolved. Now in cities, you cannot use cash anymore. You just use your cell phone. This is very, very, tech advanced compared to other countries in Europe, for example. So, this is, I think, what it will look like in the very near future, and it won't. It won't be strange for me.
Yeah. Thank you for these good questions, and thanks for this panel conversation on how we are boosting climate entrepreneurship in Africa. Thanks to Judith Li from Westerwelle Foundation, who will be running ClimAccelerators across Africa soon. Thanks to Martin Kiilu from Growth Africa, who is currently running the Africa ClimAccelerator, up for a call for startups. So if you're a startup, feel free to apply, feel free to check it out. And thanks to Abdelrahman as well, and he's active in Egypt, and who will be running a ClimAccelerator in Egypt very soon as well. So thank you all three. Have a good day, and see you soon again.
Thank you, Christian.
Have a great day. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
And now I just want. Thank you. Have a good day. And I think, thank you for this session. I think I just want to now introduce a bit what the next topics will be about. And I think we will have some interesting sessions coming up in the week of action this week and also today. So I've got someone coming in here right now. Bjarke, tell us what are you doing here? Tell us what's happening today.
Hey Christian, that's true. I'm back because, as you know, the week of action is actually all about us showing all of the people who are taking climate action. It's about also showing the strategic programs. So we have a surprise. I have a small surprise for you as well.
Go ahead.
Which is actually that the Climate Launchpad Global Grand Final is kicking off tomorrow. It's something that you, the viewers, you and me as well, can go in and watch and follow and learn more about what the Climate Launchpad is. Basically, it's the world's largest green idea competition where early stage entrepreneurs can get help to some of their early stage ideas, so they could potentially become a startup, like we just heard about in your session. So to introduce the global grand final, we have invited Emily from Climate Launchpad, who is the lead of Climate Launchpad. And Emily, you're with us. Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. And you're calling in from the Netherlands, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'm from the Netherlands, yeah.
And could we maybe, before we dive into Climate Launchpad and the global grand finals tomorrow, could we just get to know you a little bit? Like, who are you? Why are you also involved in this great program and competition?
Yeah, thank you, Björk. Nice meeting you again. Yeah, my name is Emily Bronting, and I'm the program lead from Climate Launchpad from the TU Delft perspective. With the people, I'm working now for 2.5 years within the TU Delft. And from out of the TU Delft, we are organizing Climate Launchpad program in very shortly, a very good cooperation with EIT Climate Kick and your colleagues as well at the Climate Kick site. For now, already year 8, so very exciting. With a team of 4 people, we are running the Globally program within the TU Delft.
That's amazing. And year 8, that's pretty impressive that you've been running the Climate Launchpad for so long. So Emily, can you tell us what's going to happen at the Climate Launchpad Global Grand Final this week?
Yeah. Tomorrow we have the semifinals. So the 70 best teams out of the 55 participating countries are pitching their teams tomorrow during the semifinals. That will be done in 7 different breakout rooms. We split all the 70 teams over 7 different teams. And the top 2 of each team will get selected and will win access to the grand final, the global grand final at the end on Friday. And besides that, they win access to the Climate Launchpad Accelerator afterwards, this program. And besides of those 14 teams, we will select 2 wildcard winners. So that makes a total top 16 participants for the CLP Accelerator program afterwards. And those top 16 teams will pitch their idea this Friday during the global final for a jury of 4 people. So yeah, very exciting. Cash prizes to win for them this Friday. So yeah, a lot of inspirational entrepreneurs are coming in the next coming days.
That sounds really interesting. I bet the teams are very nervous now that they're going to pitch. Do you have you been in contact with any of the teams? Do you know how they're feeling?
Yeah, very excited, of course. And the teams, yeah, they are coming through an entire program. They started some of them already in March, April. We selected out of 2,150 applications around the entire 55 countries. We have selected more or less 800-900 teams that get access to the program. So they had already 2-day boot camps, follow-up sessions, and their national finals where they needed to pitch their ideas already. And out of those national finals, we selected the top 3 that made it to the regional finals. We had 6 regional finals in total. And out of those, we have selected 70 teams. So in the meantime, I can imagine they have pitched their ideas already a couple of times, but still, they will be very excited for tomorrow.
Definitely. It sounds like they've been through a lot, so hopefully they're ready for tomorrow. Just taking a little step back, I mentioned that Climate Launchpad is the world's largest green idea competition. Could you just tell us a little bit about who is Climate Launchpad for and where is it taking place?
Yeah. Climate Launchpad is a competition for green entrepreneurs. So we are, this year we are running it in 55 countries all over the world, in a lot of different continents. So in all those 55 countries, we have national partners who are running the program for us locally. So all green entrepreneurs that are interested in starting their own business or has great ideas to start their own business needs some help to get started. To find their first paying customer, we can help. So they can apply somewhere from March till June next year as well. So actually that's where we are. So we are, almost, I want to say around all world, but there are so many countries we need to conquer to get our competition over there. But we are running in 55 countries. So let's see where we are next year. We started 8 years ago in 14 countries, only in Europe. And now we are in all the continents in 55 countries running.
impressive growth, and hopefully we'll see you in even more countries. I just want to know, could you already share with us who's going to be the winner of the Climate Launchpad Global Grand Final?
Yeah, that would be nice if I know that already. But unfortunately, no. The teams, they are going to pitch for 28 different jury members tomorrow. So very helpful that they are all helping us. Very thankful for that. But no, unfortunately, I can't tell you that. But it will be a very nice green startup that is trying to make the world just a little bit more green.
Well, then, if people are as excited as me to really figure out or find out who's going to be the winner, then definitely tune in tomorrow and the next couple of days. And Emily, just before I leave you here, I just want to hear, so what has surprised you the most about the competition this year?
The most surprising thing is the energy, the resilience, and the flexibility of our entire network. All the national leads, they're working with us, Climate Kick, but also my own team within the TU Delft. I realize that we are asking a lot from everybody, not only from the participants, but only from our trainers, the national leads, and ourselves. And it gives us so much energy and so much adrenaline. And that's surprising and amazing me every year again. And that confirms that what we are doing is a very great thing, and that it's nice that there is a CLP program. And of course, a very big thank you to all our partners, as I mentioned, Climate Kick, but also the Irish Aid People, Bank of America, BMZ, GIS, CDC, and the Technical University in Delft. And I can imagine with them, besides the CLP, we made also inside the program very much progress in helping the entrepreneurs. So in the end, the most big surprise needs to come in the next coming days when we see what are the best top 16 teams and the top 3 in the end. So we will wait for that big surprise.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much for sharing with us just a little bit about what we can expect in the coming days for the Climate Launchpad Global Grand Final. So definitely people need to tune in tomorrow. It starts with the semifinals, and then you have the interactive sessions, and then on October 29th is the grand final. So best of luck to you as well, and best of luck to all the teams.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck with the week of action. Soon.
Thank you so much. And I will now bring back Christian. So Christian, you were gone for just a short while. But Christian, as you know, we are also talking about the today's topic, right? And I know you just had some really interesting panel discussions as well. And one of the continents that are really affected by water shortages is Africa. And I don't know if you know, but obviously citizens around the world, and this is not just in Africa, this is around the world, actually have the power to do something about this themselves. So you could, for example, swap to disposals, you could collect rainwater, and you can also eat less meat and shop quality clothes. That's some of the ways that you can actually help save water. But I'm sure that all the viewers out there have some really great ideas on how to save water. So again, please do share with us on destination 1.5, where point is spelled out. Please do share if you have great ideas. And Christian, you know, this was the second day of the week of action. There's still some part of the program coming up. But what can we kind of look forward to the next coming days?
So I think stay tuned for today. Still at 3 p.m. Central European Time, we will be talking to our ClimAccelerator partners on how they boost climate entrepreneurship in Latin America and connecting it with Spain and Europe as well. So that's going to be interesting. And then at 5 p.m. we still have 2 sessions. One of them is how we are participating in the space program, Copernicus. So that's one free workshop at 5 p.m. Central European Time. And the second one in parallel is about the journey participant on what their journey was in one of our education programs. So stay tuned for today at 5 p.m. Then I think in the next days we will have sessions with the Climate Fund organizers and how they engage citizens in the morning at 10 a.m. Central European Time. And then at 12 p.m. we will be continuing to talk to a climate entrepreneur to really celebrate what they're doing and also to show what they're doing and really understand what their journey is. And many more sessions are coming up, Bjarke, and I'm very curious, I'm very excited.
Me too. So please do keep tuning in, both today, like you said, there's still sessions coming up, and also tomorrow. So yeah, we're happy to be here and happy to have you tuning in, and please do keep the questions coming.
Correct. See you soon again. Tune in and see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.